I see you've made it to SRAP Live. Welcome. My name is Michael Payan. I'm going to be one of your hosts over the next 6 sessions over the next couple days. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. We're so happy you registered. If you have any questions at all about the event, please email us at sraprojectlive@gmail.com. We're very excited to have you guys with us. Sit back and have fun over the next couple of days with SRAP.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hidden Harm and the Right to Farm SRAP Live panel. My name is Jack Einstein, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm a policy fellow at Richmond Law and Policy, and I focus on environmental and civil rights-related policy work. I specifically work on all of our communications and media, one of our current projects being a mini film called Fighting Factory Farming, in conjunction with SRAP, One Rural, FLAG, and Farmers Union. The film features a 50-state right-to-farm research conducted by Loka Ashwood and her team of researchers at the University of Kentucky. Richmond Law and Policy also has several factory farming law and policy fellowships, which have brought numerous suits against the largest players in animal agribusiness. We have an ongoing lawsuit and 2 FTC complaints against Tyson Foods for deceptive humane, sustainable, natural, and worker safety claims. The fellowship is also moving into the aquaculture space to address the environmental, human health, and animal welfare issues in that industry. Today, I'd like to welcome Danny Diamond, Chris Nidell, and Karen Hudson to the panel. Danny Diamond is an attorney, community organizer, and environmental policy advocate at the Socially Responsible Agricultural Project. With more than a decade of experience confronting the critical threats posed by industrial livestock production. In addition to overseeing SRAP's national team of community organizers, Danny serves as a research associate with the Department of Anthropology at Northern Illinois University. Danny holds a Master of Arts in Applied Environmental Anthropology from NIU and a Juris Doctor from the NIU College of Law. Chris Nidell is a chemical engineer and environmental lawyer at Nidell and Nance Law Firm. He represents individuals and nonprofits who are fighting against environmental crimes, working to protect communities, and seeking compensation for people with cancer and other diseases from environmental exposures. Karen Hudson is a regional representative for the Socially Responsible Agricultural Project. She lives on a 5th-generation family farm in West Central Illinois. She is a graduate of Illinois State University and has a bachelor's degree in education. She is a founder and past president of Families Against Rural Messes, also known as FARM, a grassroots group that organized when industrial livestock factories targeted Illinois for expansion. She is also a co-founder of Illinois Coalition for Clean Air and Water. Karen was appointed by an Illinois House representative to be a member of the Illinois House and State Joint Livestock Advisory Committee in 1997. She was also on the board of directors of the Illinois Stewardship Alliance from 1997 to 2004 and was named Conservationist of the Year by the Heart of Illinois chapter of the Sierra Club. Thank you all for being here today, and I'm going to start out our discussion with asking Danny Diamond, what exactly are right to farm laws and what was the original intent of right to farm laws?
Okay, thank you, Jack. And I encourage Chris and Karen and Jackie as well to jump in at any time because I think everyone's definitely has a strong background in this area. But in general, right to farm laws were enacted to protect farms and farmland from urban encroachment. And they came about primarily in the 1980s. And every state has one in the United States now. And they're essentially framed to protect farms from nuisance suits or suits that would be brought against farming operations for the unreasonable interference of someone's use and enjoyment of their property. That's generally how they work. And so they protect farms from nuisance suits. And in some cases, they also limit local or state even regulation over farms to essentially to protect farming from regulation and and lawsuits in general.
So basically, we have an operation that is in Loganton, Pennsylvania, and he actually owns an industrialized business where he has a kill shed, like he processes beef. It's an immediate kill. So basically, these cows are coming from all over Ohio, I think maybe Mexico, I don't know, all over the place. They're coming in, they're being killed. Then what they do is they take their liquid waste, which is blood that they call food residual processing waste, and they basically land apply it on the property that he currently owns. I just so happen to be blessed to be a neighbor of him, and he basically owns fields in front of my house, on both sides of my home and behind me. We have a extremely important trout fishing creek, it's called, that brings in a lot of revenue from people all over that like to come in and actually fish in that creek. That's in jeopardy of being exposure to contamination. We basically are trying to preserve our properties the best that we can. I actually just tested 6 of the neighbors' wells. They've all came back with high E. coli and fecal matter and coliform. So they're now really concerned for their health with gastrointestinal issues, with diarrhea, fevers, headaches, and so forth. And it just seems like a David and Goliath situation. We keep hearing he has tons of money. Obviously, we're a poverty community, and we just really want to protect our own property, but it just seems like no matter what we do, nobody seems to be hearing us. So we did put together some petitions. We were able to get 777 signatures on those petitions because we're very concerned for our air quality that comes from the industry. We're definitely concerned for our water. I'm trying as hard as I can to kind of contact the state representative, DEP, anyone that I can think of to kind of help us. It just seems like we're not really getting much of a resolution.
Great, thank you, Danny. And I was wondering, Chris, what has your experience been with Right to Farm?
My first experience, I think, with Right to Farm law was a young lawyer filed a case regarding sewage sludge application down in South Central Virginia, where a company called Synagro was land applying 1,300 acres of forest land, actually, which they called a tree farm. And it was 1,300 acres of trees that they had cut rows in between the trees, and they were land applying, or they were tree applying sewage sludge. So human waste was being spread, flung into the trees, caked on these trees 20, 30 feet in the air with, 4 or 6 inches thick cake of human waste. And so I dealt with the Right to Farm Act there in that circumstance. And to the credit of Virginia, to some extent, the Right to Farm laws in Virginia have exceptions for nuisance suits when there is a violation of, ordinary care or a standard of care with respect to the application with respect to farming, in this case, the application of sewage sludge. I met a very different Right to Farm law in the state of Pennsylvania when I filed a similar lawsuit against a disposal operation of the similar material, again against Synagro. And what I found is that not only did the state of Pennsylvania have a much more restrictive Right to Farm law, it was also very poorly written and subject to pretty wide-ranging interpretation. And ultimately, we took that case up to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and was ultimately held by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania that not only can you not bring a nuisance claim against any agricultural operation, which they define to include the disposal of human waste on farm fields, but you also cannot bring a negligence claim. And so even when you have evidence of improper conduct, failing to adhere to routine or normal agricultural practices, you cannot sue. So it creates a very, very prohibitive, measure against any kind of lawsuit against anything that arguably can be called farming. And that definition appears to be very broad. If you can have thousands and thousands of tons of human waste, sewage, applied to farm fields and call that farming.
Thank you, Chris. And I had one follow-up question to that, and it's on, obviously how different each state's right to farm laws are. What would you say the state with the worst right to farm laws is?
So the long answer to your question is the state of Pennsylvania, as currently being applied and interpreted by the Supreme Court in that state, is the most destructive and restrictive that I've seen. And I would say that's destructive and restrictive in two ways. Number one, it defines agriculture as broadly as the court would see fit to define it. So when you have a waste disposal company that literally goes to pick up sewage sludge, I mean, it's nothing other than, it is things other than. So it's poop, human waste, fecal matter, tampons, condoms, the whole 9 yards of what gets flushed down the toilet, and apply that by the truckload to fields that happen to grow crops, right? If that's defined now in the state of Pennsylvania as normal agriculture, okay? We have a situation in Pennsylvania now where slaughterhouses are delivering slaughterhouse waste that primarily blood and guts from slaughterhouses by the thousands of gallons, cumulative millions of gallons of this waste that's just being sprayed on farm fields. And I say it's being sprayed on farm fields. I wouldn't even say in most of these circumstances, or at least in some of them, that they're actually being sprayed on farms. They're being sprayed on fields that might have been used as farms. The idea, I think, is probably not that these fields are necessarily growing crops or producing wealth for the owners through the crop production, but rather these fields are disposal fields that either are owned by the industry that's trying to get rid of the waste, or it's being owned by a quote-unquote farmer that is being paid not to farm, but being paid to essentially operate a land disposal facility for this for the waste industry, whether it's a slaughterhouse or sewage sludge or fly ash we see sometimes. These other industries that are looking for a cheap way to dispose, that don't want to pay the cost of tipping at a landfill or don't want to drive all the way to a landfill. So they find local farm fields and they use those for disposal. And again, just to close the point, so Pennsylvania has defined the agricultural operation or defined that which comes under this protection very, very broadly. So you're protecting these industrial disposal and waste operations. And in addition to that, there is no exception for bad conduct, right? So there's nothing that says if you do this negligently, if you do this in violation of some standard of care, that you can be sued. And the example that I give is that if you were raising cows, you could say that's a normal agricultural operation. Cows generate manure. That may stink. There may be some offense to that to some people, but that's something we want to protect. However, if you had thousands of cows and what you did when they died was you stacked them up next to your neighbor's fence line and you let the bodies decompose and rot there and create this extreme offense and odor and potential environmental issue, flies and bugs and birds carrying pathogens and other vectors. I would say that is conduct that we shouldn't be protecting. I would say that's negligent conduct that may be even intentionally destructive. And yet the Right to Farm Act arguably protects that. So there's no exception for that, the bad actors to be sued and to be liable for their bad activities. Once they're farming, there's very little that can be done. And a third prong that I would add to that is that the right to farm law in Pennsylvania only allows for lawsuits within 1 year of the start of the agricultural operation. And so the argument from the farming industry and the waste disposal industry is that as soon as a farm plants its first crop, they have a year. The clock ticks for a year, and then they can't be sued. And what that means is that it would encourage, for example, if a CAFO, Smithfield wanted to move into the area, what I would advise them to do, and what I think the law would at least arguably protect, is they put 10 hogs in a house and say they started a hog farm and wait a year. And after that first year, bring in another 50,000 hogs. And the whole nature of that activity changes, the nature of its impact on the community changes. But the argument is they've been farming for more than a year.
I'm Brian Coltrider. I'm the leader of the group called Friends of York County Family Farms. We're in York County, Pennsylvania, actually in a township called Codorus. So we have an existing CAFO here that has caused multiple problems with fly outbreaks and manure mishandling and stuff in the past. And when they decided to expand, I was looking for another place to live, but thankfully enough neighbors were excited to fight it. And I couldn't believe the amount of people that actually was opposed to his way of farming for all them years, that we actually had the majority of the township against it, which led to the supervisors feeling like they had to be on our side because the majority was against it. And being a supervisor in the past gave me a little bit of an understanding of what we were going to need at the township level. But with the right to farm law in Pennsylvania, it makes it pretty tough to do any kind of nuisance stuff towards a farmer. So, and in the beginning of the right to farm law, there says that municipalities can only zone for safety, public welfare, and health. So one of the groups that was helping us, SRAP, Maria, came up with the idea of a health ordinance for years, and she's been trying to get it in, and we were the lucky group that decided that we would go through with it. And the health ordinance has been a big deterrent from other CAFOs, not small farms, but CAFOs, from wanting to come in. So there's restrictions on spacing of how close you can be to other existing CAFOs. There's UV lights and pathogen filters, cost for a permit and inspections. There's just things that we were able to get in there that so far the Attorney General has not. He has sent letters, but he's never followed through with actually overturning it, and it has been what's helped our township out. And the fight that we were fighting, it seemed to deter them enough that they had said they're no longer planning to pursue an expansion. So it just goes to show you'll never get there if you don't try.
Right. And Brian, that's been on the books now. How long has it been since you guys have passed that?
Well, that's what I'm trying to remember. We started in April of 2015, and that ordinance got put in August of 2015. So it's been over 5 years that it's still standing and hasn't been overturned yet.
So that's fantastic. I think that's a good tool for the toolbox for communities. We thought it was pretty fair because it didn't impact any existing operations, but it did say that if you wanted to expand, there were certain things that were necessary to protect the public health of the community. So I think it was pretty much a win-win.
Yeah, I think it was drawn up just like a building permit or anything like that, to where if you're existing, you're grandfathered, but as soon as you try to expand or something, then you basically would need to conform to the rules. But as long as you don't expand and just keep doing as you've been doing, then yeah, there's nothing that can be done.
But for the future, I think it's something where the neighbors and the residents feel like they have some protections on the air quality and public health. So we want to thank you for doing such a good job, your whole community, of coming together. And wow, you really organized the community and they all came out, and that's what democracy is all about.
Yeah, it's something I've never done before. And now that it's been so long, I look back and wonder how, but it was help from SRAP and you that kind of gave me the courage. But when you're faced with something like that, at that time, somehow you will find the strength. It's something I never thought I could do with all the meetings and newspapers and stuff like that we had to do. You just plow through it if you have the drive. Because for me, I built an old log house here on the property, and I don't have the strength and energy to do it again. And with the building codes the way they are nowadays, I probably couldn't do what I did again. And I just did not want to lose it just because of a greedy corporation. So just have to do the best you can. But you guys, SRAP was we would have never would have got where we are without you guys' help.
And bouncing off of that, CARE work a lot of communities on the ground. I want to know how right to farm laws affect rural communities, especially in your home state.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this last night, and if you drop a pebble in a pond, there's a ripple effect across the community, disrupting social systems, economic systems, and environmental issues as well. So we're seeing problems with road damages that are externalized on the local communities, where they are having to cover the costs of this. We are seeing fewer and larger farms, more poverty, lower retail sales. In Illinois, a study was done many years ago where they looked at about over 1,000 Illinois rural communities with large-scale animal feeding operations that had been coming in, and they saw an inverse relationship with the receipts in those communities. So as these facilities located, they saw less retail sales, and really it was an inverse relationship on the local economy. And that's just being reflected across the United States. One of the things that I have noticed most in my work is that I work with many, many farmers that are affected by these facilities. So they're not people who have come from a city and decided to live the country life. These are multi-generational farmers who've been on the land for decades. And I have my first case that I was involved in was in Knox County, Illinois, where a family was split due to a CAFO coming in. And the two brothers, one brother didn't know about it, the other did. He was the head of the county board. He installed this very large swine operation. And the other brother, who actually was the closest home to this facility, tried to sell their house, couldn't sell it. They sold it at a loss, and they left the rural community. It has split up families. Right now, I'm working with someone in a county in Illinois who has severe health problems. They're both organic farmers, and they have a large organic composting operation. They're organic grain farmers, and 5,000 hogs moved in next to their property line. And the effects on this family is unspeakable. If they leave their laundry in the dryer overnight and forget to take it out, in the morning, they'll have hog waste smell on their clean clothes. They've had to abandon their farm work due to the emissions that are coming across the property line. They have a lake that is used for their organic composting operation, and right now they're very, very concerned about the manure application, which is up gradient from this lake. Probably the most telling story is the Fulton County, Illinois fight, where we worked with folks there. There were two 20,000 head swine operations looking to locate there. And at one of these sites was a family farmer his wife was pregnant at the time and he had a toddler, and he even had livestock of his own. And 20,000 hogs were going to locate adjoining his property line with a very minimal setback that we have in Illinois. And he went to the local farm bureau because he was on the Farm Bureau board in this county. And he expected to get support from the Farm Bureau on this because it was going to impact his family's health and his work on his own property. And they told him, no, we support any kind of farming. And he basically said, okay. And he made a decision and he publicly resigned from the Farm Bureau board. So I'm seeing farmers who are affected. If there is a nuisance and, someone who has moved to the country may have the ability, if they can get enough for their home, which is probably going to be devalued, are able to move. But farmers can't just pick up and move. They live on their properties, and they are some of the worst hit folks when it comes to the impacts from these facilities, because they literally have no rights. They have no rural rights and no local control.
And it's interesting because if you look at, and I hate to get too far into politics, but if you look at what's going on in our rural areas and what's being allowed and who people are voting for and who are promoting these things to happen, there are a lot of contradictions in what you would think. And so when you have, I just encourage people to look very closely at the politicians that are out there saying, I'm for farming or I'm for the family farmer. Take a close look at what they have done in their political careers to really support the farmer versus big agribusiness extractive industries, because there's a difference. And a lot of times, as we see with this industry and with right to farm laws in general, a lot of things are being done under the guise of the traditional family farm. Everyone wants to protect farms and farmers, but a lot of these laws and policies are being passed under the guise of that, but are actually really harming what we're trying to protect.
Awesome. And I have one final question for everyone, and that is where folks that are affected by factory farms can go for help, and what are the resources that are available for them?
Okay, so I'll give a couple plugs. SRAP has a help hotline on our website. We don't do litigation. We don't do these types of cases, but we work with people all over the country, and we know people such as Chris Nidell, who's here today, and so we know of other organizations and really great attorneys and firms that deal with these issues, and so we can help coordinate if someone needs help in those areas and try to get people to the right places. There's also the One Rural website that Jack mentioned early on, that is being hosted by the University of Kentucky, and that is a partnership effort between the Farmers Union and the Farmers Legal Action Group, Dr. Locat Ashwood of University of Kentucky, and SRAP. And we have this national right to farm map where you can go on the website and click on a state and find out what your right to farm laws are in your state. And that's being populated as we speak. And so hopefully people will find that a valuable resources. You can find that at onerural.uky.edu/right to farm. And then Public Justice Food Project is another place to look for legal support. I would recommend going online and taking a look at their food project. And I believe they have, they provide some legal support for these types of cases, as well as Richmond and some others.
Thanks, Danny.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Chris.
obviously I work with work with a lot of individuals and communities in trying to approach these issues in creative and sometimes with in creative ways and sometimes with litigation. And, you know, despite the hurdles, like I said, I've got a case currently down in Georgia, and I've got a case that I'm looking at in Pennsylvania as well. And so these cases are a challenge, but, you know, I think in working with SRAP and working with public justice that Danny mentioned, and other interested, you know, nonprofits and law firms, we do have a team. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with us, or I assume SRAP or even potentially public justice would end up, you know, we would end up gathering many of the same usual suspects, Food and Water Watch. But these are the groups that I work with, and if anyone wants to go to our website and reach out to us directly, they're welcome to do so.
Thanks, Chris. And Karen, do you have anything to add?
I just like to say that SRAP's always there 24/7, basically, for folks. We answer questions. We train them how to address the issue in that we use peer-reviewed research and provide that to our clients. We encourage them to carry their own water. We don't actually go out there and speak for them. They have to do the work, and we're there to assist that. And we have made long-term relationships with these folks across the country, and we appreciate the fact that they come to us because we're considered experts. And we have a team that has been, some of us have been doing this for over 2 decades. And anything that we can do to assist, if I don't know the answer to the question, I'll go to someone else at SRAP who does. So we are always there, and Danny gave the information on how to contact us, and we would be glad to help anyone that wants to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And thank you for having me on to moderate today. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Karen. And thank you, everyone that attended today's Hidden Harm and the Right to Farm SRAP Live panel.
An example of what happens when extreme right to farm laws get passed. You know, right to farm laws were originally passed to stop people from moving into an established agricultural area and changing the community, right? Essentially, they were designed to protect communities from having change forced onto them by increasing development. Ironically, the way that industry has worked to expand these laws has undone that effort entirely. The laws now give industry free rein to open up animal factories and change rural communities from agriculture to industrial manufacturing without neighbors having a say. So a company can come in and finance a farm that once grew wheat and raise thousands of animals in confinement with all the resulting air and water contamination that comes with it. And even if your family has lived on your land for generations, you can't sue them in court for encroaching on your community. Unfortunately, that is pretty much what the Himsl case established. So the question becomes, how are they getting these laws passed? Industry has had a lot of success using false narratives that fighting right to farm laws is fighting farmers. And that couldn't be further from the truth. What's critical to remember is that these animal factories aren't farms. And the harm coming from them is because of corporate controlled agribusiness and not farmers. People who want to enjoy their homes and lands aren't anti-farmer, and frequently the folks most impacted by this system are small independent farmers. That was actually the situation in Himsl versus Himsl. I think what made it such a unique and important case. So the Public Justice Food Project represented a number of farmer-led organizations, including the Indiana Farmers Union, to say exactly that, right? The Indiana right to farm law doesn't protect farmers, it protects corporations. So Indiana and the Himsl case, unfortunately, though, are not outliers. What these right to farm laws do all over the country is choose industry over farmer, one type of animal production over another. So, it's important to remember that our fight isn't against the people caught in the system trying to make a living. Our fight is against the corporations that force people to raise animals this way because they've been told they have to if they want to make ends meet. Companies like Smithfield and JBS and Tyson and co-ops like Land O'Lakes have the money to make changes and help transitions to a just and clean food system, but they don't because it doesn't benefit their bottom line. So, rather than let corporate agribusiness divide us for their gain so that they can get more of these laws passed, they hurt rural communities, farmers included. And once lawmakers get that, it becomes a lot harder to pass these laws. So I think in the Hinsel case, you really saw that clearly because once we came in representing the Indiana Farmers Union, the industry on the other side stopped saying, anti-farmer, and suddenly they started saying anti-CAFO, and that's a label I think we can win. The Public Justice Food Project brings a lot of lawsuits, and sometimes litigation is enough to get rid of a right to farm law if it's unconstitutional or just doesn't apply to you. But industry has been successful in passing such expansive and extreme right to farm laws that they can be almost impossible to get around. And so in that case, stopping these laws or changing these laws takes a lot more than that. It takes holding our lawmakers accountable to passing laws that benefit people rather than industry profit. And that takes organizing. But that said, litigation is a really powerful tool, and lawyers can be really useful in helping communities look at what their options are. So at Public Justice, we know that people living near animal factories need legal resources to protect and preserve their communities. There aren't enough lawyers who can do this work right now. So we're working to build a network of attorneys around the country who have training and support to protect farmers and neighbors fighting corporate agribusiness in their communities. If you're an attorney and you're watching this, consider joining. We'd love to help you. And if you're a community member in need of legal support, if you are trying to deal with a situation where a right to farm law impacts you, we're here to help connect you to legal resources. The legal network is small right now, but we hope one day it will be a powerful resource for people like you. You can sign up to join the attorney network if you're a lawyer. And as for legal help, you can do the same or sign up for our newsletter to learn more about our work. And all of that you can do on our website at food.publicjustice.net.
I'm getting more comfortable.
Okay, so here we go. We're going dark.
It came with Mel Gibson. Freedom!
When I could see you. Yeah, that's right. That's right. There you go. All right, good luck, folks.